So the main thrust of today is to talk about Auckland and have a look at what UFB will deliver to Auckland, and then think about how we're going and how we could do things better. And the message today is probably to challenge everyone in the room about how we could work together better to deliver the outcomes that our external stakeholders, the government, are looking to, because there's some great benefits for Auckland in this program. So what I'm here to do today is to take a few minutes to overview what we have in place already, what UFB and RBI are doing, and what we're doing to deliver Ultra Fast Broadband to Greater Auckland. So we are already working in Auckland. We have delivered the Fibre to the Node program. What that was intended to do was to deliver a minimum of 10 megabits per second to premises, with most of them in the urban areas. The second part of the initiative is to deliver broadband to rural New Zealand through the RBI program of work. We're rolling that out in partnership with Vodafone. We'll be delivering fibre into priority sites within rural communities. So that's schools, rural hospitals, and fibre backhaul to the Vodafone RBI cell towers. Vodafone are taking a large chunk of that work, and via the cell site network that we're going to have, that extends the reach of that 10 megabits per second availability of service out to our rural communities, as well as just those priority ones. UFB is the biggie. We've secured 24 out of the 33 local contracts, and Chorus alongside North Power ultrafast fibre in Hamilton and Enable in Christchurch. We'll build out the fibre network throughout New Zealand and sell wholesale access to our retail service providers. And that's around, when this is finished, it's around 30,000 kilometres of fibre throughout. So that's quite a decent breakfast. Won't be needing your muesli after that one. So what we've also done is we have completed our copper upgrades. You might have heard of the Fibre to the Node program that was completed this year. It has 2,500 kilometres of new fibre and 3,600 roadside cabinets. And what that does is it takes fibre from the exchange to the cabinet. Copper has a very short capacity. It can only make broadband available for a certain length of the copper. So what you do by taking the fibre out to your cabinet is that you shorten the reach of the copper. So the copper then can carry a greater capacity of broadband. And in Auckland, that equates to 1,488 cabinets and over 1,000 kilometres of fibre. And so what we're going to do for UFB is to leverage this fibre that's already in the ground so that we don't have to dig up all those streets over again. So what is UFB? UFB is a government initiative that was set about by the national government last term, and Chorus's part of that is it will deploy around 20,000 kilometres of fibre optic cable to more than 800,000 homes, businesses and schools by the end of 2019. So approximately 50,000 customers already have access to it from this year, and then we're looking for another 100,000 premises to be passed every year for the rest of the contract. So on average, we're going to be deploying one premise every minute for the next working week for the next 8 years. So that's quite something. As part of our RBI rollout, we'll deploy over 3,000 kilometres of fibre optic cable to 700 rural schools, and also install and upgrade 1,000 fibre-fed cabinets to enable 5 megabits per second broadband or faster to about 57% of our rural customers. And here's the good stuff. UFB does revolutionise broadband, and it will be made available to about 75% of the New Zealand population. And what it does do is it does start in the largest and most densely populated centres, and hence Auckland is a key part of this portfolio. The delivery of fibre to schools, businesses and major health facilities is a priority, with those end users being targeted for completion by the end of 2015. And what that does is allow a lot of stuff like distance learning. It allows hospitals to talk with each other, to allow diagnoses for something in Palmerston North by a technician in Auckland. So it does open up huge opportunities, and I don't think we've even started to think about all the possibilities that it raises. Businesses are seen as a priority, so business precincts are being targeted early in the plan. The remaining priority is to deploy fibre to residential areas, and this work is well underway in Auckland. So here's what it looks like from an artist's point of view. Clearly the reality is a little less tidy. So what we're doing is we are leveraging existing fibre and ducts wherever possible. So down our main routes where we've already done FTTN, we will try and haul fibre through those existing ducts so that we don't have to dig up that main road. We then install direct fibre from the exchange to schools and businesses. And then on the route from the main feeder fibre, we install a fibre cabinet. And from that fibre cabinet, we install fibre from the cabinet to each premise that we pass. So most of what you see being buried along the street is not in fact fibre, it is duct, it's a little tube. And when it comes to deployment time, i.e. a customer orders fibre through their RSP, we blow the fibre through from the cabinet. So it's great technology, and it enables us to roll out the infrastructure on demand. So what does our build look like? This is our cabinet that we're deploying for UFB. It's a lot smaller than the cabinets to date, from the fibre to the node cabinets, because there is no power required in this little baby. Fibre only needs the light to come down it from the exchange. So this cabinet doesn't need any power, and therefore it doesn't need any cooling, and it doesn't need any battery backup. So it's quite a small thing and quite unobtrusive in the streets. So what you will get is a much smaller footprint than the FTTN or your current telco cabinets that you see. All of the feeder fibre for these runs underground. We will not be running overhead fibre, and that's a commitment that we've made to the government. It will be more expensive for us, but it is in our sustainability policy for Chorus to, wherever possible, run our services underground. The only exception to that is where there is a power pole that runs from the boundary into a premise, and we already have telco equipment on that. We'd use that aerial lead in. But otherwise, from the point of the boundary right the way through to the exchange, we'll be delivering this underground. So UFB in Auckland. So I'm just going to whip through the first 2 years build, along with our tentative 3-year build plan for Auckland that's just been announced. So here's the wider build footprint, covering Orewa, most of metropolitan Auckland, and areas in Pukekohe and Waiuku townships in the south. So year 1 commenced on July the 1st last year, and we've just finished it, coming through to June. We've just started year 2, and we will start year 3 in July the 1st, 2013. So I'll take you through that in a bit more detail. What the blue areas show is areas that we have already completed or will be complete in year 2. And then the red areas are what we have tentatively penciled in for year 3. And I say tentatively because what we've done is we've put out the plans, and we'll be going through the councils to get their feedback around whether we're picking the right areas and the right priorities. Now, of course, bearing in mind that we need to cover those priority premises first, it does dictate a lot of where we go. So we started off in Albany last year. Just check I'm on the right slide. Yep. And moving on down through Takapuna this year, parts of Mairangi Bay, Browns Bay, Northcote, Birkenhead are tentatively scheduled for year 3. In the central city, we started with Ponsonby, with Westmere to Freeman's Bay to be completed this year, and the red strip from Newton through to Mechanics Bay is tentatively scheduled for year 3. UFB build for years 1 and 2 out west are centred around Henderson and Rosebank Road, with Glendine, Sunnybray and Newlyn scheduled for year 3. South of the central city, we kicked off deployment with East Tamaki, Manukau, Goodwoods Heights, Otahuhu and the airport precinct, and the tentative 3-year year 3 plan has Mangere, Favona, Glendon Park and Papatoetoe. Year 3 sees the start of UFB build in Waiuku and Pukekohe, and the light blue shade here around the townships indicates the limit of the UFB rollout. So as I say, we're currently visiting all of our councils in the area just to get feedback on these plans, and once we've done that we go back to our contractor for Crown Fibre Holdings and finalise these, and at that point they then become locked in and we start planning. And at that point also we then look at starting year 4, so no rest for the wicked. So part of the main learning for this year, and certainly out of the FTTN program, has been about keeping the community informed. When we're working on such a broad scale, we impact a large number of people at any given time in our build areas. I don't know if any of you have seen the UFB build in, currently we're in Remuera and Ponsonby, and at times it does look like Beirut. There's orange cones everywhere, and we have holes surrounded by deflective netting and people working on drills, and it's a very busy site. So we do try to make sure to the extent possible that we keep the community informed, and we do also seek feedback from the community. So it starts with what we do is we do advanced briefings to councils and local boards, and then follow up with specific advertising in local community papers around the timings and what they're going to expect, and we're working on advance notices for other utilities companies as well, start to build them into our plans. Where we need additional local information, we have arranged a program of what they call Shed the Light nights, where we go to a local hall or cafe, put on some food and drinks to bring in the people, and then get our technical people to talk through what's going to happen in the plan that we have. So an example of that is when the subject of footpaths came up on the 6 o'clock news. The residents of Arch Hill were highly concerned, and having waited many years for good footpaths. At a recent Shed the Light night in Arch Hill, we were able to show the residents what we'd be doing, which streets we would be digging up, how much work we would be doing, and what we would do about reinstatement. So we use these events around the country to try and communicate this kind of issues. We're also, here's our man in the van, billboards and street signage to support the build program. So if you see these out, that's us working in your street, and they support the announcements in the local paper. And just prior to going into a particular street, we actually arrange a leaflet drop to the residents concerned so that they can tell when we're coming or what we're going to be doing, including parking and access. So, working in Auckland. It's fair to say that this project is a bit of a game changer. It's almost like somebody said to me the other day, the change out from gas to electric lighting. It's the opportunities that this makes available to people is immeasurable. And the project's huge. And what it will do for Auckland is set it up to compete on a global level for the next 50 years. And what we're looking for here, and where we can add value and look to sort of start a new community of this, is around the coexistence of infrastructure. At a very basic level, we have support for rollout of the UFB. Everybody wants fibre. Auckland City in particular wants it, and they are a priority for the government, it's fair to say. From an Auckland planning perspective, the Auckland Spatial Plan provides a first level policy alignment and direction, and is supportive of the rollout of Ultra Fast Broadband, as is the economic development strategy. The Auckland Long-Term Council Plan is where we believe that some work is required. For example, from a cost perspective, councils seeking to recover resource consent costs, and we are prepared to pay reasonable fees, but we are not a cash cow. This is a government-funded program. It's fair to say there's not a lot of fat in it, so we need to just make sure across the country that our costs are, that we make sure that people aren't out of pocket, but also we are not out of pocket ourselves. As you probably know from the media, we have had issues around the footpaths, who sets the rules and how do we design it, and that sort of stuff is a matter of open dialogue with the Auckland Transport at the moment, and it's at this point we're working towards what should be a good outcome here. And part of this relates to, as I say, small area of Beirut, operational reality. Two areas of major operational challenge in Auckland. One is the trees, and the second is working in the road corridor under the National Code of Practice. The problem relating to trees is simply one of logistics. They are there. They are also in, as you guys probably know, in the utilities corridor. So every time we have to go through a tree, we have to consult an arborist. And what we're just finding, what's working well, is that we actually have had zero harm to trees so far as part of our zero harm policy, but we're also getting quite an inconsistent approach from the council arborist. So again, we're wanting to work with the Auckland City Council to see how we can make that just a little easier to deal with. The second part is working in the road corridor. As you guys probably all know, effective 1 January 2012, there's new legislation covering work in the road corridor, which is the National Code of Practice for utility operators' access to transport corridors, something close to all our hearts, no doubt. Both Chorus and its contractors are working to the new code, and it's fair to say there's a learning curve for all of us in there. And what we're finding across the country is that councils are interpreting it differently. So there is concern that we have around the lack of consistency of an approach. And not in Auckland, but we have had some councils say to us, oh, I didn't think that was coming into force until next year. So clearly we have some work to do there. We do need to recognise, of course, that it has national implications for us, because a change in Auckland will mean a change somewhere else in New Zealand. So we'd prefer that the code was based on a consistent practice across the country, and there's some kind of training and familiarisation needed to get a consistent approach. So any moves in order to kind of take that forward, Chorus would be very supportive of. What we also need to bear in mind is that UFB is a major government initiative. They see this as a platform for national economic growth. We are bound by immovable timeframes. We're an organisation of 500 people, and we don't have unending resources to throw at it. Funding by the government's really tightly managed, as is the timelines. And as we found in Auckland this year, they are simply immovable as far as the government is concerned. So, access for utilities. We learnt in Christchurch that in a major emergencies, roads and footpaths aren't the first utility that the residents turn to. In fact, communication networks are the most important. They get called on within seconds of an event occurring. So the importance of a communications network and its ability to survive incidents is of great and real importance to us. So making it easier and safer to lay communications networks in a road should be a priority for most councils around the country, including Auckland. So what we're trying to do here is work around some processes to make that a little simpler in Auckland. This slide amuses me, but it is true. We can't be rip, shit and bust. We do have tight milestones. We do have to complete this at speed, but we do not want to hit stuff on the way. So since the start of the build program, Vision Stream, who are our Auckland area service partner, have trained 1,100 to 1,200 contract personnel for this deployment. And this includes making sure they understand the relative standards in terms of health and safety, codes of practice, and how we avoid strikes. So what we are definitely keen on, and our Vision Stream partners are as well, is every time there is a strike, we analyse it, we get incident reporting, and we move on from that. So, and what we need to bear in mind, I think, for Chorus is that this is a long game. This is a 10-year rollout, and Chorus will be around for the next 50 years as a result of this fibre. So we're not here to just be rip, shit and bust. We're here for the long game, and we're very conscious of that when we're dealing with our other utilities in the ground. And we think we're getting better. Still a long way to go, but we think we have the right mechanisms in place to avoid them. When we're working in the corridor, we employ a number of activities to locate the services, including getting plans from utility companies and councils. We get people out, we use ground penetrating radar, we pothole, we do everything possible in order to locate the utilities before we dig. So, what Vision Stream, I'll just read through what they've said to me here that they are doing in order to improve the program here, because they are constantly trying to do that. They have a double check with required plans have been cited. They locate trees and install appropriate mitigation in their plan. They pothole every 15 metres, and that is so they actually physically look for the utility in question every 15 metres on a road. We have a regular toolbox meeting held to inform and update contractors. Attendance is mandatory. Standard health and safety issues are reviewed every toolbox, and at every meeting they cover utility protection. And it's a review, in that they review all strikes. And by that we mean not only the major utilities, but every time we hit, for example, our own chorus cable going to a customer's home or the electricity lead into a house. It's that small. Every strike is notified, every strike is understood, and a reason for it is recorded, so that we can measure and then we can manage. So how are we doing so far? It was interesting when we were looking for benchmarking before we started this project around what the industry standard was, and there wasn't much around actually. But over the life of the project to date, our rate for all strikes, both avoidable and unavoidable, stands at 1 per 1,500 metres, which I think is exceptional. So our national average is around 3 times what we actually expected to do at the start of the program. So as we understood it, best practice was around 500 metres. At this point we are travelling at around 1,500. So, touching wood, that's what we're aiming to keep achieving, and if not, improve on that, because we will get better. And it's interesting, it's one of those interesting things, you can put all the practices in place, but what it happens is that the longer a crew has been doing this, the better feel they get for an area and the utilities in it, and the better they get at locating them and avoiding damaging it. So it is one of these things that will be a continuous improvement. So what we intend to do is actually publish a bit of a white paper at this, once we have got year one, year end out of the way and be able to look at our statistics for a year. So we're actually going to start to publish our findings on this, if it would be assistance of other people at a forum like this, because it is interesting reading. So, understanding each other. It's very important that we understand each other's point of view and come to grips with each other's language. And many in the telco industry, we don't really understand how local government works, and our historic rate of infrastructure rollout hasn't been that great. So UFB, as I said earlier, is a game changer in this space. It's a very big infrastructure civil project, and that means that we have to interface more with our utility colleagues and our government. And what we are going to try and do over this next year is work at a lot better communication between organisations to ensure smooth running. Of course, there's something in that for me, and that means the better we get on, the better and easier my deployment will be. Very open to things like bus tour briefings. Come and have a look, see how it works. We can show the activity that takes place in a street, and we can kind of look through the life cycle of a build from woe to go. So I'd like to put in a word here for the Auckland Utility Operators Group. It exists as a forum for shared issues to be tackled by the utility providers. Apparently there's some talk that it could be wound up, but I think our year's experience has taught us that there are issues that all utility operators will be impacted by, and a common approach in a unitary plan is something we should think of, and we think it would be helpful for others as well. The utilities should work together to ensure a common approach, and if possible, take a joint approach with this, with respect to submissions on plans, etc. So the unitary plan is an ongoing issue for Chorus, and when it's notified next year, we are concerned about the impact it'll have on us in our work program. The council team have been fabulous. In fact, they have been proactive in engaging with us, and what we need to do is just take it to the next level with them and make sure that an outcome is reached. That means that we can deliver this infrastructure program, but still come to terms with and meet the council's requirements on an operational basis. We'd like to work pragmatic solutions out. As you can imagine, we're all a bit of a team of doers and hole diggers, so we do like to work through things and come to a solution rather than just have a conversation. So it's time for the thank you. We do appreciate the effort that the council teams and other utilities have put up with in the UFB space in Auckland this year. There's a lot of good work going on in Auckland and has already been done. And as I said at the start, the challenge for us all in this room is to have a think about how we can all work together better, how we take that strategic view of the benefit that this brings to Auckland, down at the operational dig and holes level, what can we do to align ourselves with Auckland utilities going forward so that we can all deliver this fabulous outcome of Ultra Fast Broadband. Thank you for your time.